Most people of the opinion that you should buy a house ASAP. It's almost become the measure of success. After all, isn't buying a house the best investment you can make? And of course, it's far smarter than throwing your money away at rent, right? Well, when you really focus on the details and actually crunch the numbers, this is usually not the case. And so in this video, allow me to debunk some common misconceptions around buying a house versus renting one, go through some basic calculations that will blow your mind, and why buying a home only seems like the best option there is. The key word there being seems. Let's start off with debunking something that I'm sure you're familiar with. People think that renting means you're basically throwing away money. And apparently we're helping build our landlord's equity or mortgage. My question is, so?
I missed the part where that's my problem.
I mean, for most things in life, you spend money without building equity or ownership. For example, you don't question equity when it comes to a holiday or vacation. Or in that case, you're not bothered whether you're paying the resorts or the hotel's mortgage or not. What about flying or traveling to a place? Again, the thought about ownership never kicks in. What about eating out or ordering food online? Do you ever think you're building the restaurant owner's equity or paying this guy's mortgage? That's the CEO of Uber Eats, by the way. But I hope you get my point. For most expenses, we don't question ownership, so why is it different when it comes to rent? Experiences and just living or existing at the end of the day demands a price. And so living in a particular location in a house is basically that. You're paying for a roof over your head, security, and a place you can call home.
Home sweet home. Which one's yours? Right there. My sanctuary, my party pad. Wait. No, it's this one right here. Home sweet home.
So forget about equity and ownership for a second. I air quoted there because although you actually do build equity in your home when you're paying your mortgage, it's not as straightforward as it seems. If you're paying a monthly mortgage, just because you're living in the house you bought doesn't mean you actually own it. Because technically it's the bank's house, because you're still paying off the loan. And not to mention how these mortgage payments are structured. For a good portion of your repayment period, especially the first couple of years, you're mostly paying interest and building way lesser equity than you think. This example will illustrate this better. This is a payment schedule for a home loan to buy a house worth 500K. And the loan term here is 30 years. As you can see, in the first 2 years, out of the monthly payment you're making, 80% goes towards interest, while you're only paying 20% towards the principal or equity. Remember that the interest isn't building equity, but it's just the cost of borrowing. Basically, you're paying the bank. Or like I mentioned earlier, maybe you can consider this as you paying the bank's mortgage or equity. It's only in the 18th year or so that you're paying more towards principal instead of the interest. And you heard that right, 18th year. It's more than half of the loan term, which is crazy. So for a good portion of your loan, you're just paying a lot more interest instead of the principal. So you're technically building lesser equity too in the process. Hence the air quotes, I guess. And if you're good at math, something would have stuck out to you in the previous example.
Did you notice anything?
It's only at the end of the 18th year that your principal amount outweighs the interest for your monthly amount of $2,997, right? And considering this is a 30-year loan, it means you're paying far more interest than principal for this house in the grand scheme of things too. 54% to be precise, while you're only building equity through the 46%. This isn't by mistake. It's by design so that banks make a profit and ensure that they are paid first before it really starts benefiting you. And also there's compound interest. Compound interest. Einstein was right. It truly is the eighth wonder of the world. I mentioned this in some of the previous videos too, but compound interest can benefit us if we take advantage of it, or it can seriously negatively impact us if we fall prey to it. And in this case, it's the banks that take advantage of this. And this all has to do with the cost of capital. In the previous example, I chose a house that cost $500,000, but let's be frank, especially in the bigger cities, finding a decent house for that price is unheard of. And so the more you increase the price of the house, the more you're paying the banks. And this interest you're paying the bank is unrecoverable. Just like the monthly rent you would have otherwise paid if you planned to rent instead of buying. We'll talk about these unrecoverable costs in detail in a bit, but I hope I've made my point. That you need to really crunch the numbers, otherwise you'll end up paying this amount your entire life.
I would like you to crunch those numbers again.
It's programmed. There's no such thing
Just
as
crunch them. Just crunch them, please.
crunch.
Did it help?
See, if you're planning on living a simple middle-class life, then this actually might be a good thing to do. Because then you know that you have a house you're slowly building equity on while it appreciates in price, while also having a roof over your head. There's so many benefits with that. And that's the thing too, right? At the surface level, it clearly seems like the better option. And that's why we've been told from a young age that it's better to buy than rent for these obvious reasons. This reminds me of when I was a kid. I was pretty good at math. And I remember looking at how much we were paying for rent on a monthly basis and thinking, why not just spend the exact same amount for a monthly payment towards the house and actually end up owning the house in the process? I was 7 or 8 at that time. And that's basically the format that the world is following right now to buy a house. Funny how the world works, right? Or did I manifest that shit? All jokes aside, this is something that benefits banks, real estate agencies, loaners more than everyone else.
I am terribly, terribly, terribly alone.
Not that kind of loaner. And that's a good segue into how did we freaking get here, where everyone's obsessed with buying a house? Why is owning a home such an important thing? Let me show you a funny experiment that might blow your minds, and this will only take you a couple of seconds. Close your eyes and imagine your dream home. I'm serious. Pause this video and actually close your eyes and imagine it. Okay, so chances are that you're thinking about a single family home or a detached home or an independent home, probably with a garage, a backyard, and maybe even a picket fence. That isn't a coincidence. It's just years and decades of marketing and selling this idea that this is the actual true measure of success. Why is that? And where did this come from? After doing my research, looking at different studies and articles, I was able to categorize this into 4 big reasons why home ownership is such a huge deal. And let's start with media and how they glorify owning a home. Anytime we watch a movie or TV show and they show us that this family is living the happy, perfect life, it's always in a nice, independent, spacious house. That is, up until some murderer shows up or their past comes back to haunt them and they get killed in the process.
I'm in the house.
You're behind the couch.
How do you know that?
I can see your feet.
Okay, jokes aside, that is literally what we're shown in pretty much every single movie or TV show. And of course, there are numerous reality TV shows around house hunting and home improvement too. And why is it that there's no show or movie glorifying or showing the advantages of renting? I mean, it isn't flashy to rent a house, or maybe it's not something to aspire to. But if you think about it, maybe that's why we struck a chord with a show like Friends, where they're paying rent and living in an apartment unit. It's super relatable.
Okay, what else? Rent.
2-3 years of rent, utilities, food.
So I'm writing you a check for... So you fell asleep during my movie. Big deal, right? How do you clear this thing?
And let's not even get into what we see on Instagram and TikTok. Media in one way or the other shapes our psychology and thinking and programs us without us knowing. Second, the real estate industry. They have no choice but to promote the shit out of buying a place because their livelihoods depend on it. This not only includes the real estate agents and brokers, but also banks and the property management teams that are constantly looking at selling places so that they can make some money. And capitalism fuels anything where people need to spend money. And this is a prime example of that. They'll say anything to sell you a place, and so you don't want to be taking real estate investment advice from them. And since they have so much to gain, they'll do whatever it takes to ensure the market is booming.
Right this way. Thank you for coming to the open house inspection. Yes, you like?
附近有很多闲店。
The government stands to gain a whole lot if you buy a house. The economy flourishes when people spend their money within the country or bring money from other countries to spend here. And so they incentivize people to own homes, be it through programs like the FHSA or First Home Buyers Plan, or by providing insurance or support to banks and lenders. They even help banks with insuring mortgages, helping them push out more mortgages in the process for individuals. And not to mention, the amounts we're talking about here are huge when it comes to real estate, so there's all the more bang for their buck per house. And if these homeowners end up living there, then this means that they'll end up spending more money, which in turn means more contribution to the economy. And let's not even get into the topic of taxes and how that benefits the government. So all in all, you can see why the government is so for the idea of you owning a home and constantly promoting home ownership. Finally, your family and social pressure. Of course, the slippery slope of them all, it all comes down to your family. The moment you're doing decently well for yourself, you have your family members talking about how they can't wait to see you own your own home and come and spend time at your own place. Apart from this constant pressure, you've also been told from a young age that the home they bought was one of the best investments that they ever made. See, while their intentions are good, financially, the numbers may not be.
It's just not worth it.
And let's not even get into the social aspects here where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. You might think that you're above all of this and you don't care about what your friends and colleagues are doing and saying, and you'll live life on your own terms. Sure, but biologically, we're wired to constantly try and belong to a group or community, and so comparisons with another person's circumstances are bound to happen. And not to mention, the whole keeping up with the Joneses is now on steroids with social media. And so the pressure from your family and society is something that constantly gnaws at you, pushing you to buy a house to achieve success. Now that we know how we got here and why we are so predisposed to owning and buying a home, let's look at whether it's actually a good idea to buy a home or should you be renting instead? So there are two fundamental parts of this equation that we need to talk about. One, the numbers or the financials behind this choice, where we'll really go into the numbers and calculations to see how much a house would cost to buy versus renting one and which is the better option for you. Click here to watch this breakdown. And two, the psychology or the thinking behind this decision, which I would say is more important than the numbers part, because unless we understand the thoughts and the rationale behind buying versus renting, the numbers don't really mean anything. Click here to watch that video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on one of these, I guess. Which one will it be?